I would like to welcome you all back after the coffee break to session 4. That is chaired by Kostas Klinos, Head of Unit Open Science from Directorate A from the European Commission. Before I go into the session, I would like to ask Fotis to explain how we will use the Slido for the prepared questions that the audience can answer over the online tools. Fotis, can you explain this very quickly?
Yes, thanks, Miriam. So a few words on how to participate to this feedback session, which is focusing on the users and researchers. Note that tomorrow there will be also a feedback session for providers, focusing on thematic providers in particular. So for the feedback, we'll be using the Slido tool. So on your PC or phone, go to Slido and enter the code. The code is also available in the next slides in case you miss it. Then there are two parts in this session. One with predefined questions and polls. These are also available in the website in the program tab. You can read all of them there. And there is also another part of this session afterwards with open questions from the audience. So on the first part of the session with the predefined questions, there are two types of questions, the A and the P. A stands for audience and P for panelists. The A questions are targeted to the audience. They are polls and they can be accessed via the polls tab of Slido. You can see the screenshot on the left. So we start with the polls, click on that tab. And the stress-free colleagues from the Athena team will activate the poll, and you will be able to vote. Then the P questions are targeted to both panelists and audience and can be accessed by the Q&A tab of Slido. So the other one on the left you see in the screenshot. So how it will work? First, the chair acting as moderator will be introducing the feedback questions in a slide. Then we start with the A questions, which are the polls, as we said. So go to the polls tab and submit your votes. And then polls will be changing as the panel moves to the next question. So stay tuned. There will be 8 polls in this session. Then we move to the quick questions for both panelists and the audience. The idea is while the panelists discuss the questions, the audience provides feedback in parallel. So all these 8 polls are accompanied by the panel questions P, for which we need your input. So after you have voted for each poll, go to the Q&A tab and provide your answer or comment to the P questions that will be presented on the screen. And the last bullet, you can upvote other questions or comments that you like or agree with. I think this is the general setup. It would be good if you can also write the P number, for example, P4 or P3 before your question. This would be easier for us to process the feedback. Thanks, Miriam.
Thank you very much, Fotis. So then I would like to give the screen to Kostas, who will chair this session, and it's on added value for end users. Kostas, I will give you the screen.
Okay, thank you very much, Miriam, and welcome everybody to this session. It differs from the previous sessions because it is run as a panel discussion with the participation of the audience, as Fotis just explained. It is quite innovative in its setup. First time I see such a session, innovative and with the different types of questions. We have a very nice panel that I'm not going to introduce the persons because I understand that they have already been introduced in previous sessions, but they come both from ESFRI and the EOSC communities, and with a very wide range of expertise from data science fair implementation, risk infrastructure operations, and so on. The focus of this session is on what is on the users, what is the added value of EOSC for end users, and in particular for the end users from the research infrastructure community. So let me say a few words about as introduction to this session. Probably I won't say something very new because there have been a lot of discussion till now. Unfortunately, I could not attend the previous sessions. But we know that we have lots of hurdles related to data, a lot of challenges. It is not at all a new topic, but still the challenges persist, although we are making progress. To mention some of those, volume of data, we know that roughly doubles every couple of years. We know that only a very small minority of data are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, fair in other words. We have an acute problem of interoperability across data types, even within a discipline, among sub-disciplines of a discipline very often. Few of the data that are fair are in a trusted repository. Apparently, it is something like 20% or less than 20%. We saw a lot of these challenges with the COVID, and I guess in the audience there are several participants who have participated in the development of the COVID-19 data platform. There we saw that it is very difficult to make data interoperable across sectors. For example, the genomic data with epidemiological data, with clinical data, and so on. Although this is so important in order to understand the progress of the epidemic, or so important to devise appropriate treatments or vaccines for the epidemic, it is very difficult. Interoperability is very difficult, both at the technical level as well as at the legal level, in particular when personal data limitations apply, but also interoperability across different service providers. And the community has been discussing a lot the GS8 with one set of principles and rules for access to their data for the genomics of the virus versus the European Nucleotide Archive on the ENA on the other hand. So we have a lack of interoperability at many different levels. In addition to all this, we have the different types of issues that pose challenges. For example, just before this session, I was at the European Parliament, where we were called a number of us to discuss with MEPs on simplification. So making participation in the European research program simple. And DMPs, so data management plans, and the need to professionally manage data. There are questions raised, I mean, well-meaning questions about how much of a burden is this to researchers? Is it necessary? To what extent can we go? So the many users can see this as an additional limitation or a hurdle or something that's imposed on them, what they have to do with their data. We have to take this into account. There are other questions that relate to foreign interference. You know, there has been a very active discussion in the last more than a year, and the Commission recently proposes guidelines on foreign interference in European universities. In other words, malevolent presence among the academic community in order to steal data or to do other types of interventions. Then also during the pandemic, but also more generally, we have had very often the discussion of or have been discussing responses by researchers who say, yeah, what you say all is good and fine, we need to share the data and so on, but what do I get about it? What do I get for it? Why should I share my data? I have a career ahead of me, I have responsibilities. Why should I do all this? How do I benefit? And they are right. They are right because generally, and it is not a unified landscape, but very often, the researchers are not rewarded for appropriately annotating, storing, making their data fair, and sharing them with others. So this implies also that we have this other but very important complementary issue if we want to go towards real data sharing that has to do with the issue of incentives and rewards for researchers to share. In other words, that has to do with changing the research assessment system. All these challenges are obviously challenges that can be addressed only by the users and together with the users. So that's why this session about users is so important. So that is by way of introduction. And I would like now to ask this question to be put on the screen, I guess, 40 or Tasso. And the first question, A1, and you have all the audience has a few a minute, let's say, to respond. As individual researcher, do you have a clear understanding of what is the vision behind EOSC, its main goals, and its agenda for open science and fair data? Okay, we'll get any results already. So about half of the people have a clear understanding. So I fully agree, is actually 71% have a clear understanding. And the yeah, I guess it's about 70-30 or thereabout. So there is still some work to do about this. We have no data from the past. I hope this has been progressing over the years, because I know discussions with many people, let's say 2 or 3 years ago, was quite unclear to what EOSC is about. I think this represents quite a bit of progress. Now we have 72% that they fully agree, which is about 3/4 of the people, of the participants think it's quite clear of what's the vision behind the EOSC. Okay, so that is, for me at least, encouraging. I don't know for you, dear panel, anyone who wants to comment on this response?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's reassuring. So I think the vision's consolidating and is being communicated better. As you say, there's maybe some work still to do, some people who disagree or don't understand the concepts, but I think that's overall a positive result.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. So, Petra, you raise your hand.
Yes, just to be careful, because like the people responding are people who attended already this meeting.
Of course,
so
of course.
There is quite big bias. If I will ask on the corridor of university, I will get like completely different answer.
Yeah. Yanni?
Yeah, it's in the same direction. There are 200 plus attendees and only 86 have voted. So I'm wondering what is happening with the remaining 120. Are they clueless or are they indifferent? And so I think your statement that there is still work to be done, or SARAs, I can't quite remember, is very valid. We have quite a bit of work to do. It's encouraging, but we are not out of the woods yet.
Right. A lot of work still to be done, especially with a broader community. There is an inner circle that understands maybe quite well, but there is a broader community of researchers. Werker.
Yeah, I just want to re-emphasize this, that it is really a biased selection of people answering. So I think there has been progress on the understanding and the spread of the word on EOSC, but if you ask like 100 randomly selected researchers at universities in Europe, you would get a different answer, a very different answer still. Okay, and maybe we should do this at some point. Okay, time to go then to the next question, to these binomes of questions. So now we have the question for the audience. You have a few minutes to reply, saying the EOSC vision towards end users presented in the previous session, session 3, including the plans of the EOSC Future project, goes in the right direction. What do you think? And then the question I ask the panel is, as researchers, what is your end user vision towards EOSC? And what would be your major recommendation for achieving it? Suzanne, you want to go first?
Okay, yes, thank you, Kostas. So what could be my end user vision toward EOSC? Maybe not knowing the name EOSC, but knowing the services that are part of the EOSC. Because actually for end users, knowing the EOSC is not very useful, but how to use the services is much more what we need. And my major recommendation towards achieving it, wow, efficient and interoperable services. And I think we had a lot of useful, very nice example today in the previous session. So that would be, yeah, very quickly.
Okay. Ari, you can speak here for the users, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's been a while that I've been a scientist directly, but I can definitely say that at least for my this end user vision very much connects exactly for these interoperable services, but I think that they are also very specialized services, and also the possibility that the researchers can create their own, and also that they are things which are created specifically for them from the generic services provided by EOSC. And probably as a researcher, I might not even know, as Susan just mentioned, I might not even know that they are actually EOSC services. I just noticed that things work. And that's the vision which I would really like to see. Of course, how do we get there is another question, but I think we are getting towards that direction.
Okay, so in other words, that the success of EOSC means that EOSC is almost invisible. Things just work and the users don't even notice it.
It's at some point. I think a good infrastructure usually is noticed when it stops working.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yanis, what do you think?
Well, it's
your major recommendation for going ahead.
Well, there are many, but let me. One is something that also is in the chat that Carol mentioned. We have to go out and discuss with the researchers in the corridor and the researchers in the universities and research organizations for them to understand EOSC. For the greatest majority of the researchers out there, EOSC, they haven't heard about it, or if they heard about it, they don't see much relevance to their work. And this is, while it could be very relevant to their work. So I think going out and advocating and explaining and also listening to their needs and adapting of what we do, I think is the most important recommendation to change the results of the polls just to grab something. And this is, we do partially that through the research infrastructures being involved heavily in the building of EOSC, because the research infrastructures have researchers as their users. But there is a big percentage of the researchers, the majority I would say, that they don't use research infrastructures. So we have to go out in the field and explain to people.
Okay. Petra, do you want to?
Well, first when first I heard about EOSC, I said, well, that's great, because then different universities don't need to reinvent the wheel again. It's possible to do things just once, which is still true, but it's clear that in some sense, it's much more difficult than we thought, because the science is very broad. And I can speak on my small field that, for example, for me personally, everything is like there. I can open my science. There is nothing like missing. I don't have problems with that. I cannot share genomes with some other group, for example. So this is a very difficult topic than to do something overall. And I think it's good to focus on small topics where it's needed and where it will help. Because finally, we should not forget that we are not doing it because we want to open science. We want to make science more efficient. We want to have progress in science. Like just opening the science will not bring new, I don't know, batteries, right? So we need to do it more efficient. That finally scientists will be more efficient, and they will then be happy to use the tools because it will be easy. So this is just, I guess the people there just somehow knows that it will speed up the science if we will open it. But this is just an intermediate step, I guess. And this the people, it should not be explained in the way that the goal is to open science. The goal is to speed up the science, to make us to communicate more. It's something like bringing, I don't know, internet to the publicity. That speed up all the communication. And by opening the science, this could do the same actually, because you don't need to wait for the paper to be published. You can already start discussing, I don't know, measure data, live data. Someone with like another group will start measuring the data, and I can already chat with them. Oh, this is cool what you are measuring, because this is not done. Normally it takes 2 years to see the data. This is like closed, and I have no idea what's happening, what they are doing. So this could change finally, because people will want the change.
Yeah,
it's like with internet.
Okay, no, absolutely. The openness is not an objective per se. What we want is research that it is, as you say, progresses more quickly, it's more efficient, more productive, especially that it is higher quality. Its results are higher quality, and openness is, and EOSC also is a way, it's a condition to achieve this. Okay, but if we focus on, as you say, several of you, on specific problems of specific researchers communities, and on having their data fair and stored appropriately and so on, is it EOSC overall that we should be pushing for, or is it these specific tools and services that are federated under EOSC? I mean, in other words, if we were 25 years ago, would we push for the web, the World Wide Web, or would we pushing for some services that the web makes available, makes possible? Anne, what do you think?
Wow, I'm not sure I understood the question, but
we're talking about focusing on specific needs and that of specific user groups.
Yeah,
that
so
EOSC should be doing that.
So
and
okay, so maybe
yeah,
I can
and
answer.
the question is, therefore is, and at the same time, we're saying that EOSC is not well known. So it's maybe 72% known, well known in this community, in the participants today. But if you go out, probably it's much less known. And the question is it EOSC to be known as such the right aim, or is it the particular tools and services and awareness that needs to be built among specific user communities what we're after? And EOSC is just the umbrella for this. It's the federating mechanism.
So, I mean, I can answer from my own perspective and my own experience. At the beginning, when people talk about EOSC, I don't understand anything. But if I see it in practice, then I understand what it is about. What I think is very important is to focus on use cases that are very specific to communities and they can relate to their day-to-day work. So I was completely overwhelmed at the beginning, but if you show me one service and one thing and I get some guidance on how to use it, then I can enter the EOSC world. But if you say there are thousands of services and you can pick up whatever you want, I don't know where to start and I don't want to start.
Yep. Okay, good point. Meanwhile, the results are out. 2/3 of participants agree that the plans of the EOSC future project and the overall vision towards end users goes in the right direction. Sarah, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, again, like from an EOSC future perspective, that's a reassuring result. I think there's still more that needs to be done within the project, though, and I think the engagement of users is a really critical part of that. So we've established a user group and are consulting with that group to get feedback on the developments, but I think we need to enhance that more and do more of that to make sure that EOSC is understandable. And like Anne said, I mean, you need to pick up on specific use cases because often researchers are coming through their disciplinary communities and maybe don't have awareness of EOSC or the overall vision and concepts, and the range of services could be quite overwhelming. So I think we need to make sure that people are able to find that relevant content, and things like the recommender services should hopefully help in that too. And to do much more work engaging with the different infrastructures, with the ESFRIs and the research clusters, to make sure that we're meeting those different use cases.
Okay. We have actually 73% who agree, with 7% disagreeing. Now we have a number of comments on the screen as well.
Yeah, and I think we have some recommendations from the audience related to this question. Yeah. And I think that we can summarize them mainly in two types of recommendation. One is really linked to what Anne just said about simplifying and supporting the users in navigating the services, providing better seamless integration of the infrastructure, move away from the very technical description. So simplification is really one of the key concepts coming out from the recommendation. The second interesting recommendation, I think, is the first one from Jan about rewards. So maybe, I don't know if any...
Yes. Who would like to comment about this? Suzanne, maybe? How can we reward researchers for sharing their data?
Yeah, how to reward researcher, you mean? This one?
Yes, the question by Jan.
Yeah.
How to reward researchers for sharing their data?
Yeah, I think it's actually it's an important aspect, and it's partly it's taken by the task force on curricula in the EOSC Association. And not only there, because, for instance, we know that EOSC Future and also some projects are working on that. I think tracking citation of DOI is a good point, but here again, that means we are still working with quantitative data, and this can be an issue as we are dealing with research. To focus too much on quantitative data or DOI or number of citation instead of the quality of them. So this is something that we should on which we should work. How to is still a work to be done. Maybe some colleagues have a more precise idea about it.
Okay, so you're saying that that's good, but it should be combined with other metrics, because just citation of data would overlook other important factors. Yanni, exactly. You have a comment on this?
Yes. Currently, the main element that through which researchers are judged is publications, quality of publication, and then there are numbers and so on and so forth. And a research product often is not, in this day and age, in the open science paradigm of research, or if you want, in the digital way, when the digital tools play a very important role in doing research in any field. Other research products should be elevated at a similar level of importance and should be judged, though, with a similar level, with the same processes. So if for publications, peer reviewing is the fundamental way of judging the quality of the review and then going to publication and so on. The community, the research community, the universities, the research organizations should think of how to judge a data set, how to judge a software. And the elements of reproducibility and accountability enter very strongly here, because the same way we can say, this publication was wrong, and therefore, shout at the authors. In the same way, a data set that someone else is using, the same way that before they were reading a publication, they were arriving at different results, should be judged. So this is, for me, the way, and Costa, as you know better than me, the effort that is done now at the European level to assess research and researchers in a different perspective. And for me, we should keep the peer reviewing and the emphasis on quality, but expand the objects that are the element of that assessment way beyond the publications, software, models, protocols, so that reproducibility, the R of FAIR, is applied everywhere.
Okay, great. That's a very important point. These questions have triggered the interest of many people, I see. So, Sverker.
Yes, so I agree very much with Yannis. Let me go back a little bit to the vision of EOSC, and I then reflect on this from the perspective of the researchers at my university that I'm in contact with every day. And I think what they would really like is to, at least the younger researchers, is to have access to the type of environment and research method that was described by Anne, for example. And you really doing digital research. And then also the type of dashboard that Yannis presented in his presentation, where they can seamlessly use any type of resources from local up to European. That would be really, really good for them. And some of them are on the way of doing that, especially as young researchers in their own disciplines. And then when this mode of research, digital research, is entering the system from below, when these younger researchers sort of grew up, I think the system of merits, etc., will change automatically. So it will take a long time, of course, then, but these younger researchers will also become older researchers that evaluate research, and they will acknowledge this type of digital results, different types of digital results that Yannis talked about. So of course one can try to accelerate this process, but again, it is within research that the change of attitude will have to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We have this other question also that by Facundo, help navigating the myriad of services by providing helpers to answer the question, is this service available or appropriate for me? And this is urgent. So I don't know if Ari can comment on this. If you want to comment absolutely on the previous questions, please go ahead also.
I think I will start with the previous questions, though.
Okay.
Because first of all, of the assessment, I think that the metrics are of course nice, but are really the key point which I've tried to do in my own university, where I'm still working for a couple of days, is that we try to do really so that even these other research products are even considered in the faculty positions, because beforehand they were not even listed anywhere.
Yeah.
So even having them in a qualitative sense is already a big improvement, and I think that this commission approach is probably the way to push it also in the universities. And I think that this is really a matter of universities and the way places where the actual evaluation is going to be done, even though I mean the metrics are nice. And then about this, is this service available and appropriate to me? I think that's very much a question which I think Sarah has been trying to, or the EOSC portal is trying to answer in some machine level. But I do think that the key point here is really that people start to use these services and then they end up in publications and scientific conferences where they say that they have been using this kind of services. I think this word of mouth is really important, and that's why it's important to get these things started that way.
Okay, Sarah, you want to follow up on this?
Yeah,
regarding
certainly.
This question of services?
I mentioned before, I think sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming when you've got a whole list of services and you're trying to determine which one's the most appropriate for you. And I think there was a comment either in the chat or the Slido when I've been looking through. Often people learn about these things through their peers. And I think those kind of research community networks are also really important. So trying to draw some of that information into the portal, and that's what's planned, you know, through the AI recommendations, looking at what similar researchers have used so that you're surfacing then the resources that are most likely to be appropriate for that particular community should help. But I think we can't underestimate the fact that, you know, we're all human and we also connect with others, and that's where we often learn things, and we need to try and draw more of that expertise in.
Okay, time I think now to move to the next set of next pair of questions. Could they be shown on the screen? So, question to the audience is: the current state of EOSC platform implementation presented in the previous session makes EOSC already attractive from a user perspective? What do you think? And then, to you, dear panel members, what is your major recommendation regarding the short-term implementation of the EOSC platform and in order to improve the engagement of users? Whom should I start with? Zverka, maybe?
Yes, I think this is a tricky question because engagement of users is can mean very different things. So going back to what I talked about in the presentation about the task force, the EOSC task force on researcher engagement, we have different levels where engagement of users can happen through different types of mediators. So for example, getting closer contacts between ESFRIs, ESFRI cluster projects, and EOSC is one way of engaging with users and making sure that the EOSC resources are useful for the ESFRIs, to be short. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the individual researchers at universities, for example. And there I think the engagement of university managements and rectors' conferences, etc., to bring home the message that there is this thing being called EOSC that is built, or rather there is these opportunities providing by doing digital research that are now coming into reality. That's an important task for them. So really engaging also the research performing organizations.
Okay, Ari.
I just wanted actually to support Sverke here, because from the RPO point of view, research performing organization point of view, avoiding acronyms, is that I know from fact that, for example, university libraries would be really keen to know for when they are providing help, at least in my university, they are the ones who are usually providing help for scientists in these aspects, that they would have specific, especially in domain specific, but also generic services, which they can recommend them. Of course, they are looking many cases from the point of view of data, but it's coming more and more also for the other digital services. And I mean, advertising to these people who are helping scientists in their own work, I think that might be a very short-term way if we can identify these services which are really useful for them, of course. So we have to think about how to sell these to the people who are then selling them to the researchers.
So you mean that we should be using intermediaries like libraries,
yes,
to improve the engagement of users, and the EOSC platform should appeal not just to end users, but to all these important intermediaries such as libraries, but many others also.
Exactly.
This is what you're saying?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, let's take the opinion of an end user then. Anne, for example.
So yes, so I would say, why not having some kind of mentoring program to onboard new user? I feel what you said before, I mean, having the libraries on board. In my university, we have libraries on board, but there is quite a big disconnect with what a librarian knows about what I do and what I would like to learn about EOSC in practice. So maybe having a mentoring program would be more effective.
Mentoring for whom? For the end users?
For the end users. Like,
for the end users,
like me, because I would have liked to get onboarded a bit more efficiently.
Right. Okay. Petr, you are also an end user.
Yes.
How would you think about this question?
So there are different ways how to learn about the services. I like when I have seen the talk of Anne, this is the way how I learn about the things, because I see that it's working. If I have had no idea, which I had like half a year ago, and I searched for EOSC Marketplace, this is so weird that you log in somewhere and then you request access to some service and you get response after, I don't know, 4 months. I get response that my access is granted. This makes no sense. I understand that it was some whatever beta version of something, but then it is not working like that. If you will have exactly these thousands of services and you have no idea what to use, you will simply use what others are using. It makes no sense to reinvent something. We cannot force users to use it. For example, OpenAir Explorer is quite useful, at least like for me. But if in like 2 years people will start to use Google data search, then we cannot fight with that. Makes no sense. Then the users are happy, then they are using this service. And then EOSC should provide services which are missing, basically. And this exactly was mentioned somewhere in the chat. Just with like EdiRome, people are using it because it's useful. And that's, I think, the main goal. So we need to think, and it was mentioned by I think, Yanis, we need to identify services which are needed and which are missing. And then it will work automatically. And of course, it will take some time because you cannot force users immediately. But if your supervisor will use the tool, you will use the tool as well. And then it will start working. But it will not be, this process, it takes at least 5 to 10 years, which we need to count on it. And with librarians, it's complex because, you know, like our Charles University, there is everything. There is humanity, there is physics, there is mathematics. And there is one librarian department. They cannot help like physicists and people from humanity studies because the problems are different. This needs to be done on a different level. Of course, they can help with the data storage or some stuff, but not at all with the tools like Jupyter Notebook.
Okay, I think that's very useful, spot on what needs to be done. So we have 2/3 again saying that the platform implementation as presented is attractive already, and 30% disagreeing with this. Sorry, 18 to 20, yeah, 70%, 70-30 again.
It's not. It's sorted in a weird way. So
yeah. You fully agree. At the end, you tend to disregard it because at the end, yeah.
Yeah, so very few agree. 20% agree, and 50% on the fence.
Because it's always sorted in a different way. So before
it's sorted
it was
by
the ones
votes as opposed to semantic.
That's right. That's right. So actually, it is only 20% agree that it's already attractive. So a lot of work ahead of us. How would you comment? How many people have voted? 70. Yeah, 20% now. So how would you comment on that from the Suzanne and then Yanis?
Thank you, Kostas. Actually, I think it reflects perfectly the need to have more concrete use case and more easy to understand service. And this is exactly what has been said previously by some of us, but also in the audience in the chat. If a lot of people neither agree or nor disagree, this is because what we need now is to simplify the process and the understanding of the services, how to use them, and how what kind of services do we have. So maybe I think the first step of development of the EOSC was quite complex, was quite technical, because we needed it actually. And now that we have a kind of established governance, and we have the different projects, and we know where they are, where they go currently, we can open a new step, the second step of the EOSC, where we try to simplify a bit both the vocabulary, maybe, but also the presentation and the use of the services.
Okay, Yanis?
Yeah, I think the score, the results of the survey are very natural and are to be expected, because much of the groundwork, as Suzanne said, is what has to happen first. And this doesn't touch the user. The user doesn't see that. Bringing together, the e-infrastructures and the lower layers, the generic and the more semi-specific parts of the research infrastructures. This is something that the user doesn't see. So this has been the first part, to bring together pieces, and the current state, it doesn't show very much to the user. So I think it is very fair and partly understandable. If a year from now it is the same, and we haven't been able to build enough so that a lot more use cases and scenarios are implementable and constructable, and all more people can see their lives being improved, but what we will have at then that would be very worrisome. This is a yellow flag. That a lot of work needs to be done, but it's somewhat expected. It's still, we have to be on alert and finish it. That's the way I would explain it. But if I could answer also the previous question, not the how to make it closer to the user, but what is the priority implementation? Let me draw. Peter mentioned Google. Let me draw an analogy with Google. Google beat out all the other search engines and website engines, Yahoo and Altos and everyone else, because it had better discovery of information. The algorithms that they implemented blew everyone out of the picture. So the first priority for me is something that we discussed before: how we can have intelligent discovery of services and data and everything else that someone needs, not to have to know someone or to have to know the person, the name of the file or of the software and so on and so forth, but through terms that the scientist, the researcher understands, to figure out what feels relevant to them, with the percentage of success that Google has. This is fine, and then we'll make a true breakthrough in the usefulness of the people, and maybe we won't be afraid of Google catching up. That's intelligent discovery is the
Right.
name of the game for me.
Intelligent discovery, which is something that I discussed at length as a very a top priority already from before EOSC was set up, so from the preparatory phase, and it has become part of strategic agenda, but I don't know how much progress we have made in that direction. The time is flying, so yes, good to put some of the question with the top votes on the screen. So Evangelia says it is essential for risk infrastructures to have qualified personnel that will act at the interface between the RIs and EOSC. The reinforcement of RI human resources is required. And there is a question coming up about these skills, I think, afterwards. Carol says, to convey to users, we need to show really routine science that they can relate to, like the Reliance demo. And Federico says that it would be great if training to use the platform could be included in education programs at the university level. Anyone wishing to comment on these comments? Yes,
so
Sarah, please.
I can comment on that training one. So there is work planned around the training in the EOSC future, and that training focuses specifically on the kind of EOSC platform interface and how to use it. And there are a number of kind of groups that we're looking at to develop training for. There's actually a workshop coming up, I think it's later this week, maybe tomorrow, that's specifically around intermediaries, so libraries and other groups that want to support the rollout of EOSC, and looking at what training content they need to develop that. So there will be work delivered that helps people engage in EOSC and hopefully makes it easier to use the platform, because I think it can be difficult initially as a user.
Okay, thank you. Fotis, maybe you show now the next set of questions, A and
Yes.
B, because we are time is running very fast. Okay, now I think it's about interoperability. Not exactly. So EOSC can help ESFRI users to further engage in interdisciplinary research and open science practices. To what extent do you agree? And the question to you for the panelists is, what is your major recommendation again towards the implementation of a federation of fair digital objects in Europe in the short term? Who wants to have a first go at this? Maybe Suzanne?
Or maybe not. Thank you, Kostas. Let me take a bit of time to reflect.
Okay. Okay, Sarah then.
Yeah, I've not had that much time to reflect
I can ask it
either,
myself if you want.
But I mean, one thing I would say in terms of federation of fair digital objects is that we have to really build from the community standards. So I mentioned before about the work to try and aggregate resources from different catalogs of data products. And I think there it's really important that we're working closely with the clusters, the different research communities, and building from that existing practice that's there. So not reinventing standards for EOSC itself. We have to kind of build on the existing standards that are in place and develop the crosswalks between them.
Okay, so working across ESFRI infrastructures and ESFRI clusters is the most important issue here, the most important recommendation. Ari, would you agree?
I think that definitely helps, but of course one has to understand that also, even though all infrastructure field, I mean the clusters don't cover all the infrastructures, and all the infrastructures only cover actually a minority of researchers, I think, in the end. So we have to really think about, if we want to really build this thing, I don't know what is the short-term way of doing this. I think that the lowest, probably the clusters are the easiest. We can start from there, and then we can see how that can that start to roll by itself then for the other fields. But I think that they will need also support to build their own way of interacting with this kind of environment.
Okay, who else has a concrete recommendation in that for how to go forward in that, which is a rather technical question and quite challenging? Anybody?
If I can speak, so just I think if the object is fair, it's already like federated, it's findable, that's enough, that's the goal. So we need to like find the objects which are not like yet fair completely. And I think we don't need to have federated everything together. Actually, for me as an end user, it's better if I'm searching for some, I don't know, neutron data, I don't need to see in my results also the data from biology, which actually fit to the search because something is named same. So it will be fine to go to these clusters, and then I don't need to have one search engine for everything. So of course, then it depends on in which community you are, if it's fine for you. But we don't need to, I think, federate everything together. It's just enough that the data are findable in this sense for me.
Okay. So if everything is fair, then I mean, there's no technical challenge in federating them. Yanni.
No, I would disagree with that actually. To federate something, you have to start low, and you can start light, and that would be the main focus to get lightweight metadata, common clean metadata, in order to be able to connect. And I agree that clusters are the right way, are the right environment because they're closer. But you have to federate them, and in order to make sense, you have to have some semantics. So otherwise, the fact that they are fair doesn't, they cannot be brought together and mean something. So you have to start light and eventually arrive at ontologies that carry all the semantics that you need. And it's not that we need to start now. I mean, work has been going on that in OpenAIRE, in other contexts. But metadata, I mean, you mentioned interoperation. And this question is partly about interoperation. Interoperation at the semantic levels, starting easy and then moving to the harder parts, is the critical part for federating these objects.
Okay, maybe we consider it. Yeah, agree, fully agree. Here we have 80% saying that EOSC can help ESFRI users to further engage in the disciplinary research and open science. Okay. Ari, would you like to comment maybe on these results? How does it seem to you?
I think especially the ESFRI users probably are the ones who can really like kind of benefit from this one, especially when the ESFRI infrastructures directly kind of facilitate this interdisciplinary work. And they of course work with the more standardized tool, and the work which is done in the infrastructures to standardize them further and to connecting the EOSC. I think that then of course it makes the interdisciplinary research easier for them. And I think that's the only comment that I can give for this. And I think it looks good, at least for the persons or the about 200 people what we have here. I don't know how many actually answered to this. 60.
60.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a logical answer. Yeah. Okay, let's see the comments, if there are some comments. Success stories, yeah, very important. I do not see how librarians in my university could do better than Ant's demonstration. They deal with fair data, but it's fair software that we need. And then should now your money go into developing even more new services, or covering the cost of resources and make them free for EOSC users? Okay, this is anyone who wants to comment on these first three, actually 2 comments and 1 question, I think. So more services or cover the cost of resources and make them free, the ones that we're already developing or have developed?
Yeah, if I may, Kostas.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think that's a very good point, actually, to ask the question. And of course, we will need more new services in the near future. But regarding where we are now in the development of the EOSC, I would suggest that definitely we need to cover the cost of the resource to make sure that the services already available are free for EOSC users. And another point, if I can go a bit further from that question, would be maybe to spend a bit more money, or at least to develop a kind of more precise strategy about how to work with how to onboard the users. Maybe this is not part of the core or the main topic of the main call, of ESFRI EOSC call. And this can be something on which to reflect, not only building the technical architecture of the EOSC, but also the sustainability. And part of the sustainability, a bigger part of the sustainability, will be made by the number of users that we'll have.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else wants to comment on this? No, if not, let's go to the next set of questions on skills and career paths. So to the audience, new professional roles, skills and career paths in the fields of open science, data, software production and curation are essential to cope with the digital transition. You agree or disagree? And then for the panel members, what main support do the researchers need to gain the necessary expertise in managing research data in line with FAIR principles, etc.? Sarah, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. So I mean, I think having kind of support staff embedded in the research teams, so the kind of research software engineer, data steward role, or support that comes from the research infrastructures is really important. You need somebody who can kind of partner with the research groups and take on some of that data management responsibility, and help with just raising awareness of open science practices and the relevant tools to use, relevant standards. Now, not everybody has the opportunity for that, because it obviously does take a lot of resource. But I think increasingly institutions are investing in this area and trying to have support within the different research kind of departments or faculties. And I think that's an important area for investment within EOSC, because I think, every researcher can't become a data management expert. There's a certain level of skills that every researcher will need, but I think there are additional kind of roles and career paths that also need to be supported, and they need to be recognized to make sure we're not losing those people to industry, because I think at the moment it's not always a viable career.
Okay, thanks. Sverke, you have some experience with providing such support to users, right?
Yes, and I would like to disagree a little bit with what Sarah just said. So in the long term, I see that research data management and also open science has to become sort of an integral part of the research process. And the way to get there is probably through getting the ideas, the knowledge into education, both at the undergraduate level, at the graduate level. And then it will become an area where it's natural to do research, for example, in the way that Anne described to us earlier today. So I think it is not a sustainable solution to have data stewards, a lot of data stewards, a lot of sort of experts perhaps centrally at the university doing these things. It might be needed today, and it probably is needed today, but in the long run, I think it has to be within the research environments that this is done, and also that they take responsibility for it.
Yeah, probably we need a combination, like, once upon a time, it's only professional drivers who drive cars. Now everybody can drive a car, but still we go to the professional to get help with the car when something we don't know about or is wrong. The Ari.
Yeah, I actually was about to say a little bit in a similar way that sometimes you see these expectations to have a huge number of data stewards in the universities, and then when you go to universities, they definitely don't want to hire a huge number of data stewards. And I think this approach of education, and then of course some specialists you definitely do need, and there's special cases that you do need this specialized help. And then I would like to add another thing, which is also that actually also presented slightly with the presentations earlier, which were very nice, was the fact that I believe that some of the services also will make things easier, in the sense that these virtual environments and places where people can share this kind of development, that can lead to the research culture, in a sense that these aspects which are now covered with certain kind of data management things, they can be somewhat automated in these systems, and they happen so easily that people want to do them because it's easy, not because they have to. And I personally hope that these technologies will help on this factor.
Okay, thank you. We have meanwhile the reply to the question, and we have 87% or thereabout that the skills and new professional roles and career paths are essential. It is, I think you all agree with this. Maybe we can directly look at the questions or comments from the audience. Being a researcher, let's go to the top again.
It just moved down one, Kostas, I think maybe with the voting. So it's second now. Being a researcher, FAIR's not my priority.
Oh yeah, it's not my priority and do not have the skills. Therefore, I think the service providers must provide technical staff to help with that. Okay, this is what we have been discussing. An open science help desk that the researchers can contact to have support is another logical suggestion. And awareness of open science data, the added value forcing the research process, and then training locally. Anne, maybe you would have a comment as from a user point of view on these comments or your own views. Would the help desk be useful, for instance?
Yes, I mean, this is a bit what I mentioned before. Like when I started, I would have liked to have a human on the other side where I could ask questions. So having a place, maybe of an open forum, which is open to everyone, because I hear very often about the inclusive, the embracing diversity, but I don't really understand what that means in practice. So I don't know, I think it could help maybe. So you cannot hear me apparently.
Okay.
I can hear very well.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear. Yeah, no problem. We have two questions that we have not answered, but I guess we need to end now. It's the session finished in a couple of minutes. So thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions. Difficult to make a summary. Certainly, what things that came out very strongly in the beginning is that EOSC should be made much more visible, but the question is, with the broader communities, it is somewhat visible within the research infrastructure community, but it needs to be also outside. And that it was a question to what extent this visibility is for EOSC as a whole or through the help and services and that it offers. We had a very interesting discussion on rewarding data sharing, and that the EOSC has an important role to play in that respect. It's not just about citations, it's about quality as well, and these things need to be rewarded, including through peer review of not just publications, but other types of research digital products like data sets. We discussed about this outreach and that to be done directly through with the users on one hand, but also that in many cases through the intermediaries, through target intermediaries, could also be very useful. The example of libraries was this started from the issue of libraries, but there are several other intermediaries that one could be targeting. It is clear that there is a lot of work to be done in the future about the EOSC platform, where only 20% of the audience thought that this is already attractive. But I think this is in the radar of everybody, and we're working on this. Skills are very important, and we need to promote them at every possible level. We probably need support of researchers by professionals. Despite that, we should expect the researchers to become more and more proficient in managing data and other digital objects and acquiring the related skills. So that's my short summary. Sorry, I omitted obviously lots of good points made. And again, thank you very much for the discussion. It was very interesting. Back to you.
Thank you.
Miriam, or Miriam.
Thank you very much, Kostas, for excellently sharing this lively discussion in this session with using the Slido tool. So it's clear that we defined too many questions to be answered in this session, but it was very interesting, and thank you all to the panelists to contribute to this good discussion. I think what we saw today is that the discussion on EOSC is much more mature than it was a year ago, and this is really very nice to see that there is progress and that there are things going on and that we are at a totally different level at the moment. Before I close the session for today, I would like to thank the Athena team for the excellent organization of the technical issues of this webinar today. Despite of snowstorms, blizzards, and power cutoffs, it went really well. So thank you very much for this. Then I also would like to thank the program committee and the task force, and especially Fotis, for preparing this excellent program. And I think it was a great discussion today, and I'm very happy to. Well, that it went so well today. So here you see also the key to the Slido, where you can fill in the remaining questions that were not be able to answer in the session today. The other thing which I want to say is that some of the people that were joining today will also be in the ERIC forum, which is taking place tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and also there is the final meeting of the Fair is Fair project, just for your information. And then I am looking forward to day 2 tomorrow and see you there all again at 10 o'clock. Thank you very much, everybody. And please send your presentations to the stress-free team so that we can upload them on the ESFRI website. And see you all back tomorrow, and thank you very much.